Hi, Andreas. Thank you very much for being with us today. I think that it's very relevant that we hear your opinions regarding the state of the nation and also what can Portugal do to increase our positions in terms of education and lifelong learning. So one of the things that in our report we concluded, and that's no news there, is that there were, with COVID, losses in education. There are things there that can prevent or make the transition to labor market much harder. So what have you seen in other countries, and what would be your recommendations of things that we should do here in Portugal to overcome these difficulties with lost learnings with COVID?
Yeah, Portugal is not alone. We have seen in all countries that young people that had not learned or learn on their own, that did not have access to alternative digital kind of means, maybe not a great supportive system at home to support their learning, they were left very badly behind in this pandemic. So this pandemic has amplified many inequalities in our education systems. It has also accelerated real innovation. Young people who were capable, and creative learners who had that, effective learning strategies, who, found their own resources. For them, that experience, has been we have seen a lot of technological innovation in education. We have understood that learning is not a place but an activity, that people can gain more ownership over what they learn and how they learn and when they learn and where they learn. But overall, disparities have increased across countries. What you can do now, the most important thing is to help those who fell through the cracks to catch up. There's additional support, sometimes tutoring, but often also much more tailored learning opportunities. The pandemic has shown us that the kind of one-size approach to learning doesn't meet the needs of many learners. The moment it is disrupted, those people fall through the cracks. So to aim for a more personalized, more individual approach to learning, it's also maybe different places of learning. We always think about school or university. I do believe we have to think about a wider range of learning opportunities and environments. And this is very crucial. When we lost those students for long, they will not come back. So I think we have a limited window of opportunity to provide the support.
One of the other things that we've seen is that the transitions to job market with COVID from people that are graduating, for young people that are graduating from schools or universities in Portugal, has decreased. So there are more people that do not get a job after 3 years. Have you seen this trend in other countries? And what should be done here to show to people that education is key for their future?
The pandemic has probably just accelerated that development. The job market is becoming more complex everywhere. It requires a broader range of knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values. And the pandemic has just accelerated that transition, making it harder for young people who cannot compete on experience, who cannot compete on social networks. But it just means we just have to redouble our efforts, to provide better assistance to young people to understand the world around them, to understand the opportunities of the labor market, which are much harder to grasp these days. The labor market is more complex. We have to provide better career support, better career guidance to build that connection between the skill set that people bring with them and the opportunities that are out there. So this is not so much an effect of the pandemic than an effect of structural change that the pandemic has just accelerated.
In terms of long life learning, we've seen a positive development in Portugal in terms of the indicators, but there's a gap that is widening. So low qualified people are doing less long life learning, and the more qualified are the ones that are investing more in that front. We still have a country that, despite also the good developments in terms of lowering the low qualified people in the job market, still has lots of challenges. So what is the role of companies, and what should be done in Portugal to increase the capabilities to provide long life learning to our citizens?
Well, again, it's not a trend that is unique to Portugal. We see across OECD countries that individuals with greater abilities, more skills, actually continue to learn much more intensively, whereas those who need actually that lifelong learning most often get the least out of that. That's a general pattern. But companies can do a lot. Good places of work should always be good places of learning these days. And the economics actually work well for the companies. Investing in the training of employees is absolutely crucial. It's not about making studies longer. In fact, I would say that's one of Portugal's problems, that people stay too long in initial education, get too late into the labor market, rather than seeing, the place of work as a place of learning where I continue to expand my careers. In the long run, rather than having people completing and piling up lots of degrees, we should give them a budget where they decide, what do I learn? Where do I learn best? At, at what time in my life is the best moment to invest in accumulation? So I do think, in the future, people should own that budget, not that government that invested just in formal institutions.
Yeah, that's a very important perspective, even when our country is very pressed in terms of productivity. The productivity of our companies has slightly increased over the past years, but we are diverging from the European Union average. And so we at the State of the Nation also did this study on the relationship between education or higher levels of education and productivity. And we are not seeing the effects of having a much higher qualified population in terms of young people, and that impact on the productivity of the country. Have you seen this paradox in other OECD countries, and any ideas on how to sort this out?
Productivity is always a matter of two things: the skills that you have and how good your economy is in extracting value from those skills, turning better skills into better jobs and better lives of people. And it's not just about, again, formal degrees. It's about having the right skills, the skills that actually transform economies and societies. Portugal is still a country that is very much driven by credentials. You accumulate often long, abstract degrees. What matters for productivity is, to have skills that actually can turn around environments, and to have companies that actually are capable, again, to turn great skills into good jobs. So that combination really, really matters for productivity. It is a matter of building that human capital and investing it well and using it well. And in both fronts, Portugal could learn a lot. It's not solved by having more people study for longer. It's really about equipping people with the right knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values.
Mm-hmm. And productivity is key for higher salaries, and so that having more qualifications, more education pays off. In Portugal, we've seen that the salaries haven't increased in the past decade, unless for very low qualified people. So what's your message for this? So people need to study. That's the only way to put the social elevator to work in countries like Portugal. So how do you see this lowering of returns from education in countries like Portugal?
Yeah, salaries are always a function of productivity. You can't raise salaries without, improving the kind of productivity. So that's absolutely key. We have seen in many places a productivity, stagnation, and often also a divergence of productivity. You have some companies who are really, really good at the frontier, great utilizers of human skills, turning, skills into great productivity. And then you have a long trail of companies that have not changed their production function. That's the reality. And the question is often, the diffusion of good ideas and good practices and good innovations. Now that economies need to become better of, scaling that, but you will not do so without having the foundations for this. And these are good skills. And salaries are the consequence, not the cause of that.
But they are fundamental for people also to understand that getting the competencies the right competencies will let them to have a greater life in the future.
Yeah, that's a general lesson that we have from across the OECD. The link between skills and earnings and employment is very, very strong. When you see a weakening of that link, like in the case of Portugal, ask yourself whether people are learning the right things. Sometimes they just accumulate degrees that are actually not about, economic output and so on. So I think that's really, really critical.
And that means that also this is a role not only for governments but also for companies and for us all as individuals.
Yeah, if for the government, ask yourself, once again, are you just increasing the length of studies, or are you increasing the skills value? Do you provide the kind of knowledge and skills that matter for economic outcomes? As a company, ask yourself, am I using the talent in my company really, really well? Do I put people to the kind of jobs that actually uses their potential best? And if you put the two things together, you will see that people with better skills are going to get greater salaries. Where you do not see that link between, education and salaries, something usually is wrong with either the education or the kind of workplaces that do not, make good use of that.
Thank you very much, Andreas. I think that there are very good insights here in our words, and we have in Portugal a lot of work to do in what concerns education, skills development, and the transition to labor market. Thank you very much.
Thank you.